Did you know there was once a Jurassic Park haunt at HHN, complete with these mutilated dino hybrids and these vicious velociraptors stalking through the foliage? We'll uncover plenty more facts about HHN at IOA and much more in this episode of HHN Trivia. Welcome, friends and fiends. I'm 6 Billion, your horrifying host, but let's get this party started and celebrate Halloween all year long. For history, we'll revisit HHN at IOA. For our haunts, we'll be dodging triple scares, scenes with at least 3 actors, and we'll explore weirdly placed scare zones in abnormal alleys from last week's final. Gone but not forgotten, we'll look at Defunct entertainment. And our to-answer wildcard category is Deja Rooms. I'll show you 2 scenes from different haunts with either similar or identical room design, and you'll have to name which 2 haunts they are. Now, let's head over to HHN at IOA for 100. Who was the first icon of the first ever HHN held at Islands of Adventure? His daughter Cindy was scrapped at the last minute, so Albert Kane, aka the Caretaker, or I guess the Scary Taker if you watched last week's episode, heralded this new era of HHN over these 5 islands of fear.
I know what evil lurks in the hearts of men!
I'd argue that he's just as important as Jack the Clown, especially considering that Scream House was one of those staple series of early HHN. Don't wet yourselves as we experience our first triple scare for 100. Avoid the viscera of past victims strewn around this castle moat as fantastical monsters attack from all sides. What haunt was this from? You know, for all the flack that 2024's Goblin's Feast got for simply being the pretty haunt of the year, that castle moat delivered more scares than many of its neighbors. Huge kudos to those characters for turning what seemed like a simple transition scene into something truly unforgettable. I'm really glad that Goblin's Feast came to fruition. It was one of the first haunt pitches that now senior show director Charles Gray imagined over a decade ago. Let's venture over to Abnormal Alleys for 100. What was the only official scare zone located on South Street, pictured above, in the New York section of Universal Studios? Maybe a less crowded spot was chosen due to the bulky costumes or the ability to better project onto the New York facades. But these killer clowns from outer space in 2018 certainly cemented themselves as one of the most fun street characters since the Treeks and Foons over 15 years prior. I say bring back the foes. Time for another blast from the past with Defunct Entertainment for 100. This was the second longest tenured show at HHN, and the theater it was located in no longer exists. Now, we all know that the Wild Stallions of course hold the record, but surprisingly, at least at the time of this video, with one more year than Academy of Villains and Nightmare Fuel, the Rocky Horror Picture Show A Tribute is still the runner-up. Early HHN had a lot of shows, and maybe you could argue that many of them were simply the same show, different name. But sadly, in the last 20 years, entertainment options have certainly dwindled. Finally, let's end the Scaredy Cat round with Deja Rooms for 100, and this is a pretty good visual representation of how I feel when the Scaredy Cats jump on me in the middle of the night. It's quite interesting the difference that lighting can make on a scene. One evokes a sense of aging, rotting, and decay, and the other looks like the aftermath of a deadly attack. I really wasn't expecting to see a scene from 2017's Scarecrow the Reaping pop up in 2023's Yeti Campground Kills. Which one do you think pulled it off better?
Stop! My creatures are humans, are beasts.
When you think of HHN, you think of Jack the Clown, right? Well, he never actually appeared at IOA. During those 4 years, his only appearances were over at studios: 2005's Rat Run Chainlink Gauntlet and 2004's Horror Night Nightmares Haunt. Speaking of, let's start the 200-point round and head back to HHN at IOA, where in 2004, Disorientum was the only haunt located in IOA, housed within this venue built specifically for HHN. 2002, 2003, and 2005 fully transformed IOA while still offering immersive soundstage haunts, but 2004 split the difference between both parks. Over in Marvel Superhero Island, that sole haunt was housed in the Carnage Warehouse, named after 2002's Maximum Carnage. Yes, that Carnage. As the inaugural haunt. Now, Marvel didn't realize this concept would feature so many dead superheroes, and the unofficial creative liberties like this in the early years of HHN are part of why rights issues are so stringent now. Keep your eyes open for this next triple scare, where a trumpeter, a bassist, and a statue walk out of a bar. Hands down, this is not only one of the best crafted scares I've seen at HHN, it's one of the best crafted scares I've seen ever. Who could possibly forget the graveyard from 2023's The Darkest Deal? But I guess for everything the haunt did right, it did also have one huge glaring plot hole.
I don't know how any of them could play their instruments without mouthpieces.
Unforgivable. Time to venture to our next abnormal alley for 200. The corn gods have never been kind to Universal Orlando, and it all started with this scare zone in the Seuss backlot. Now, we've talked about Rime of the Corn quite a bit, but we haven't talked much about the scare zone it's based off. Field of Screams. The first time Universal grew actual corn, and the first time it had to withstand a hurricane. With both parks open, there needed to be plenty of ways to get around. Field of Screams through Seuss, and Fright Yard by the back sound stages. Don't let me catch any one of y'all growing corn in Florida. HHN has suffered enough. Grab your popcorn and silence your phones for this next defunct entertainment question. This stage hosted the inaugural appearance of the Wild Stallions. Did I get ya? It wasn't the Fear Factor stage back in 1992, but rather the Wild West stage from the defunct Wild West stunt show. Combined with the IOA years where Bill and Ted was in the Toon Lagoon Amphitheater, the pre-Fear Factor era was actually longer than the Fear Factor era. Let's move on to something else we've seen plenty before in Deja Rooms for 200. There ain't no rest for the wicked, but there's still probably more well-rested than me. This type of room design, with some type of distracting prop in the middle, is quite common at HHN. It's easy to use that misdirection to create an effective scare from the other side. And we saw that plenty in 2016's Ghost Town, The Curse of Lightning Gulch, and 2021's Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. In the latter, you could find Daddy Westthorn's pocket watch in the servants' quarters, which not only means he was keeping secrets, but he also
got busy!
I could just eat you.
Now, not including the soundstage venues, do you know which themed land at Universal Orlando Resort has contained the most haunt venues? As we head back to HHN at IOA for 300, you might be as surprised as I am to learn that it's actually Jurassic Park. So can you name all 3 of those haunt venues? All 3 of them usually functioned as normal daytime experiences, giving the haunts strict and restrictive layouts. The Triceratops Discovery Trail housed Project Evolution, which is near the top of my haunts I wish I could have seen list. And right next door, the Jurassic Park Discovery Center cleared out the bottom floor and launched 2 of the most iconic series of the 2000s. Thunder Falls Terrace, a literal restaurant, was also cleared out to make a haunted house, preventing these venues from normal operation for months. And it's been a while this episode, but our very first Carnage question, featuring our very own Herald of Chaos, has finally arrived. Hey, sometimes the little things matter the most. Can you name which event year utilized all 3 of those Jurassic Park haunt venues? Funhouse of Fear, Jungle of Doom, and the original Psychoscarapy, HHN 13 in 2003 is the only year that utilized all of them. And given that these venues all had pretty strict footprints, I'd be curious to see how different the layouts were from year to year. Anyways, let's head back to Sprung Tent 1 with our next triple scare for 300, where a trio of skeletal avians hide between the glowing runes. This one may be the most compact triple scare of the bunch, and if it weren't for the Darkest Deal, 2016's Tomb of the Ancients would still have the best triple scare I've seen in 15 years. If you didn't get to see Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Angry Animals, well, you really missed out. Now that we've escaped that tomb, let's waltz over to our next abnormal alley. Fractured Tales was one of only 3 scare zones to occupy this defunct location. These twisted storybook characters overtook the friendly and innocent Woody Woodpecker's Kid Zone. And those themes would indirectly tie into both 2008 haunts that were located back there. The Hallow and Scary Tales Once Upon a Nightmare. My legs are tired from all this walking, so let's take a seat for Defunct Entertainment. But what do you mean there are no seats here? Ugh. Well, Jack the Clown appeared in 3 shows on the Mel's Drive-In stage. Name all 3. I guess if you want to get HHN drunk, just take a shot every time I say 3 in this episode. 3. For trivia veterans, this should be an easy one, with 2006's The Arrival,
Long time no see.
2007's Carnival of Carnage,
Not you! No! Jack!
and 2015's The Carnage Returns.
East is east and west is west. Eeny, meeny, miny. Screw it!
On to Deja Rooms for 300. Finally, there's some good seats, but yeah, they're a little sticky. One is a legendary setting meticulously crafted by the art and design team, and the other one is a porno theater. Even the seats are the exact same. We first saw this in 2013's An American Werewolf in London, and later in 2021's HHN Icons Captured, the Universal Palace Theater was little more than a reused scene with minimal changes. But at least they made a shirt specifically for his victim, since the usher didn't appear on any merchandise in 2009. I think in the future, an entire episode dedicated to the IOA years is due. I know my wonderful channel members have been asking for it, and there's plenty of onlys and firsts to talk about, including our next HHN at IOA clue to start off the 400-point round. This became the only scare zone in HHN history to feature absolutely no scaracters. Audrey Geisel, Dr. Seuss's widow, rightfully didn't want a joyous children's land tainted by fear and gore. Thus, in 2002 and 2003, Booville featured no scaracters whatsoever and hardly any mention or publicity. As the Who's could be seen locked away in their houses, the Grinch occasionally lurked the streets. After that mellow stroll, it's time for more triple scares for 400. Don't get rained on by the shattered glass as ravens swarm from every angle. With water effects used to simulate the broken glass, quoth the Raven, "Nevermore, the madness of Poe was straight bus and no cap, 10 out of 10. Geez, angry birds everywhere. Maybe Hitchcock was onto something when he made that movie. Regardless, it's remarkable what the designers were able to accomplish inside of a sprung tent. And the Telltale Heart was not only a riveting and heart-pounding room, but also one of the first major scenes at HHN to have a ceiling created for it. Over to our next abnormal alley for 400. On the very last night of 2009's event, a scare zone titled Shadows from the Past popped up in this location. Featuring past icons and the first ever appearance of Cindy Kane in the flesh, Shadows from the Past appeared in Sting Alley as a living teaser of 2010's upcoming monumental anniversary. When I was a teenager reading about these on the forums, it was probably one of the top 3, hype moments of my entire life. And as far as I'm concerned, 2010 lived up to that hype. Remember what happened last time we got a teaser on the last night of HHN? We're heading back to Mel's with Defunct Entertainment for 400, where this show only ran for a single year and featured 3, cheers, different and unique sets each night. You are forgiven if you've never heard of Death Drums from 2011, something akin to combining the Beat Builders and Nightmare Fuel into one show. And coincidentally, this was located right next to the Scare Zone 7, which also featured this many different sets each night. We've been here before with Deja Rooms for 400, and this time there's even more haunts to guess, with the right 2 rooms featured in the same haunt. I didn't know which one I liked more, so why not both? I'm sure many of you recognize both scenes from Slaughter Cinema 2, but did you recognize this makeover of Glenn Lance's death from 2007's A Nightmare on Elm Street, Dreamwalkers? And of course, Zyborgs, my favorite scene from all of 2024, was heavily inspired by the trenches of my all-time favorite haunt, 2011's Nightingale's Blood Prey. 2022's Universal Monsters Legends Collide also borrowed similar ideas. Now, if there's ever an official poll to see which Slaughter Cinema 2 haunt should come back as a full feature, you better say Zyborgs or I will. For legal reasons, that was a joke. Until I see a mind-blowing underwater haunt, Blood and Chum can stay in the past. Anyways, let's get diabolical with the 500-point round and our last visit to IOA. Match each scare zone from 2005, Blood Thunder Alley, Cemetery Mines, Fire Pits, and Terra Guard Run, to the corresponding islands of Adventureland it inhabited. I'll give you some extra time on this one. Starting from the front, Terra Guard Run overtook Port of Entry, featuring the Terra Queen's throne and nightly sacrifice. Next door was Blood Thunder Alley with its chainsaw bikers over in Marvel Superhero Island, and located within the Gorewood Forest, or Jurassic Park, was Cemetery Mines. The Fire Pits, where all the weapons for Terra Cruentus were forged, lay over in the Lost Continent. It's time for our last triple scare, but this isn't just a triple scare, it's a triple scare. This Soundstage 25 haunt showcased the most characters ever placed in a single scene, with almost too many to count. I so desperately wish that I could bring everyone back to experience 2014's The Walking Dead, The End of the Line. Still in the top 5 longest haunts HHN has ever done. I'll admit some parts dragged, but the strobe-infested forest with dozens of mannequins and even more actors was almost worth the price of admission alone. Take a minute to catch your breath on our way to our final abnormal alley, where we'll take a look at Canyon of Dark Souls, which is the only scare zone ever featured in this abnormal location. Listen, I will not tolerate any Canyon of Dark Souls slander. It's just a little baby located in the International Food Bazaar in 2011, which would be right here as you enter what is now Springfield. I always say scare zones should be transformative and not feel like temporary overlays of existing locations, and Canyon of Dark Souls at least nailed that aspect. But now it's time to head across the park to Defunct Entertainment for 500 to watch this offering that showcased magic for people with questionable tastes. AKA probably everyone watching this video, myself included. Located over in Beetlejuice's Graveyard Review during the Rocky Horror Gap, 2012's 20 Penny Circus, Fully Exposed, was certainly a show that I watched. While researching for this video, I learned that Erin Nicole Klein, who plays Chance, actually played Penny the Ring Mistress in this show. But the main thing I remember about 20 Penny Circus is the subject of our next Carnage question, because why would I remember broad details when I can hyperfixate on obscure references? Anyways, you deserve all those points if you get this one right. What prop, based off 20 Penny Circus, could be found in the haunts of 2013? If you've ever come across 20 Penny Ale, which I first discovered in An American Werewolf in London, well, now you know the origins of the brand. I can't confirm personally if it also appeared in Cabin in the Woods or Evil Dead, but nowadays you're more likely to find Lazy Bastard Bourbon, named after the late and great Rick Spencer, a legend who did so much for the event, including creating the immersive websites that us haunt veterans adore. May he rest in peace. We're back to Deja Rooms for 500. That was weird. The keyhole room design has been used quite a bit in haunts, but you just need to know which two are on the screen. My introduction to this room was in 2011's Nevermore, The Madness of Poe, Back Again for Seconds, and later in 2015's Body Collector's Recollections. Also, off the top of my head, 2017's The Fallen.
Order up!
Now, before we enter Fear's Final Gambit, I have some good news and some bad news. HHN Trivia will be taking a brief pause while I get some more exciting projects completed for you guys, but it will be coming back in full force by this summer at the latest. Now, as a howl of wind cuts through and the lights flicker, don't jump as we unveil Fear's Final Gambit, because this is a category you all wanted to see. That's right, we're taking a look at forgotten IPs, properties that you probably don't even remember ever appeared at HHN. Go ahead and wager as many points as you want, especially if you lived on IMDb throughout your teenage years like I did. Let's step into the lantern back in time to Woody Woodpecker's Kid Zone, where this IP scare zone was far from the most memorable sideshow ever seen at HHN. Did anybody ask for Cirque du Freak to make an appearance at HHN? I didn't think so. With a story too intricate for a scare zone, but not enough set pieces or substance for a haunt, and too tweeny to strike a chord with much of HHN's target audience, this one just reeked of synergy to me. And that's a wrap, friends and fiends. This is 6 Billion counting down the days until I see you all again. And don't forget, #Zyborgs for HHN 2025.